Hey, you want to hear something weird? Is we've been talking about doing the podcast for Captain Wallace for a while,
Yeah.
and since then, and I think it's been about the last week we've been really talking about putting all this extra stuff and energy into the
Yeah.
project.
Yeah.
And I swear to God, 4 or 5 times this week I saw images of, do you know who this is? And it was Captain Kangaroo.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was like dude,
Yeah.
how weird is that?
Yeah.
I mean,
It is.
like our childhood,
Yeah.
was built by guys like, Mr. Rogers
Yeah.
and Captain Kangaroo
Yeah.
and I feel odd that, you've already been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Captain Wallace is not a new project for you as much as it
Right.
is for me being involved.
Right.
And I've never really done any, children's programming before,
Right.
but just to have that realization that you're stepping into a world that these
Yeah.
people who are icons of your childhood were in,
Yeah.
and you only hope that you
Yeah.
can make as big of an impact as they did on, you know, the future, the up and coming generation.
And that's absolutely true. And of course, those kind of thoughts are way heavy on me all the time, quite frankly. I mean, here's the thing, what people don't, you know, even 25 years or so ago when I first started about 25 years ago when I first started putting the Captain Wallace uh, persona together.
Mhm.
And at that time, Captain Wallace, I created him because I was bored, quite frankly, and you know how artists are. We get,
Yeah.
in our downtime, you were saying earlier that you're in your downtime. And so during my downtime one year, the kids were at school, my wife was probably working or whatever, so I was home by myself and didn't have any art projects really to do at the time, so I was watching what was brand new back then, YouTube videos. It was
Mhm.
brand new back then. And I was watching another site called Live Video. And so everybody on Live Video was making these videos in their home, in their, apartments, their homes, whatever, with green screen, you know. So I thought to myself, I'm like, I can do that, of course. So I got a green blanket or something. I tacked it up to the wall, and I went down, got an old pirate costume, the old striped pirate pants and a shirt and a big red coat and a pretty bad foam pirate hat or whatever. So I'm like, acting in front of that, acting out my scenes and everything in front of the green screen, and I have the camera out there, a little digital camera that I still have here somewhere. And my wife walks in, comes home from work, right? My wife walks in, and here I am in this horrible pirate costume, really bad, terrible wig, and I have a green blanket tacked up on the wall, and I'm standing in front of a camera, and she's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, you see an Iron Man where Pepper
I was
Potts,
just gonna
yeah,
say that.
that's exactly what it was like. I'm like, this
Let's
isn't the worst
face
thing
it.
you've
Yeah.
caught me doing. So
This isn't the weirdest thing you've caught me doing in there. Yeah. That was exactly what was going through my mind.
yeah, that's exactly what it was too, man. And so I've been playing this character ever since, and like I said, his start was as the backstory was that he was a Mortal Kombat character because I'm an old gamer. I love Mortal Kombat, one of my favorite games. And so, the backstory is that Captain Wallace was a Mortal Kombat character that got cut from the game and he got left behind. And so he's been, asleep in the interwebs for all these years. And he wakes up one day and realizes, hey, I didn't get in the game with it, and so he starts having these adventures and everything on in the digital world. So that's how Captain Wallace started
Huh.
years ago. And it's funny because even back then, I'm such a the kind of guy I am, when I plan things out, I plan things out for the long haul. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? I look years ahead to see where I'm hoping this is going to go someday. So even back then, I was making collectors cards of Captain Wallace. And I'd sign them and give them out. Nobody knew who the hell I was, but I was signing them and giving them out anyway, and stuff. But so there's people out there that have the original Captain Wallace collector cards, and
Mm.
they are going to become worth something, guys.
Yeah.
So you might want to hold on to those because. We've gone through several different iterations since then. Back then, of course, I still have a character in the Captain Wallace show called Spooky Joe, right?
Mhm.
So back then, of course, I was doing everything myself, including playing both parts. So I'd be, recording fight scenes, because Captain Wallace and because it was really kind of a Punch and Judy type of a show,
Oh, okay.
right? So Captain Wallace was like well, he was more like Judy, really, because Judy was the one that was punching. So Captain Wallace was like Judy, and then Spooky Joe would be like Punch, who he would be taking the punches and and so everything I did was like Mortal Kombat style. They fought in an arena, and they had the Mortal Kombat style magics that would happen and things like that. And so it was a lot of fun, But over the years, it became what we have now, what Captain Wallace has become now, a show, a vehicle to teach children and adults, how to have artsy adventures, how to foster their imagination,
Mhm.
to have fun adventures.
Oh, yeah.
And the thing is really, you mentioned Captain Kangaroo and Mr. Rogers, and all those guys were there for me when I was a child. Like I said, I had a bad childhood, so those men were there for me. Those icons were there
Yeah.
for me as a child. And I remember when my parents would leave to go for work, and back then you could leave your kids home alone and stuff, and nobody
It was
bothered you.
normal.
It was normal. Nobody bothered you. And I remember at 9 o'clock in the morning when Captain Kangaroo would come on, usually after the Bugs Bunny cartoons and things like that. Every morning, Captain Kangaroo came on, and then after Captain Kangaroo, then Mr. Rogers came on in the area that we lived
Yeah.
in. And so that was my mornings every morning watching these guys, and it was
LeVar
just
Burton with Reading Rainbow, was he one of yours?
he wasn't mine because I was already off and gone and in the army by the time he started.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
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 because I remember he was like, I mean, a childhood, of mine as well. I mean, I can't
yeah,
remember. I know I was in elementary school, like younger, I
yeah.
can't remember exactly well, Electric Company was another
Oh
one,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
Electric Company, Sesame Street, of course. Sesame Street.
And
You know.
it just dawned on me, like, it was like a couple of weeks ago that Morgan Freeman was on the Electric Company. Like, I was like, what the hell? I mean, I like you just never, you know, you look back in your past and you never really realize who you're gonna see back there, and
You
it
know
was
what's crazy
Morgan
too?
Freeman.
Yeah,
What's
you know
that?
what's crazy too is, of course, I'm in the Kalamazoo, Michigan area, and really, I actually live in Pawpaw, which is about 20 miles from Kalamazoo. And what's funny is one of the original actors on the original Sesame Street, she was from Pawpaw as well.
Oh, yeah, which one?
I don't remember her name, but she was, I think she was like the first, what they want to say, the first black
Oh,
female,
okay.
actress on Sesame Street. So yeah.
Yeah, and that was the cool thing about Sesame Street back in the day was
Hmm.
it looked like an actual neighborhood.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a mix of people,
Yeah.
and the puppets were almost like secondary. They weren't
Yeah.
necessarily the main characters, but they were just there. And
Right.
then some weird stuff happened with Elmo,
Yeah.
and something changed, and then
Yeah.
Elmo took the place of Big Bird as being,
Yeah.
the character. And then
Right.
everything just went downhill.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just it was all about these stupid little, short songs and, this mix of stuff. I think in my opinion, watching it as a father now with my 4-year-old daughter, it definitely lost something that it
Yeah.
once had,
Yeah.
and I feel like I'm looking at it and just disappointed at,
Yeah.
you know, where it went. I mean, it's not 100% bad, I mean, there's still some of those elements there, but I,
Right.
once HBO got involved, I mean, that just made it worse. It should have stayed in the private sector.
And I think that's what a lot of it is too. A lot of times when the big money starts coming in and everything, that's when things start going to hell. See,
Yeah.
and that's the thing. That's what Captain Wallace, excuse me. What we're trying to do is we're trying to create the same thing that Jim Henson first created. I mean,
Mhm.
that's really in a nutshell.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to create. And the thing is, what I've tried to explain to people before as well. I had a guy um, that approached me at the event that we just did here a few weeks ago, the Kalamazoo Comic Con event here in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And I think that he was going around trying to see who he wanted to invite to his show. I think he was putting together something. But anyway, he came up to me and he's like, okay, he said, so who, because when we're at Comic Con, when Captain Wallace Artsy Adventures at comic conventions and events like that, we have a set that we put up. And it looks like a ship, it looks like the inside of a pirate ship, and it has a bench, has the captain's wheel, the steering wheel.
Mhm.
It has a portrait of my cat that I painted, that's on the side in the treasure chest, with some swords, foam swords sticking out of the treasure chest, things like that. And we have our donation box there, of course, as well, right? Because everything we do for anybody who takes part in what we do, it's all free. It's free to everybody. It's
Yeah.
everything's free. You know what I mean? I mean, I wrote and illustrated a Captain Wallace book that we sell. We do sell that. And I sell some art prints and things like that, but those are like peripheral things. Uh, but what we do is we survive on donations.
Yeah.
You survive on donations and grants and things like that because we are a 501c3 tax exempt, charity through the IRS.
Mhm.
And so you try to explain that to people, and people, of course, I think that when people think of a charity, they think of a large named established charity that they recognize, names that they recognize,
Yeah.
like, March of Dimes and Wounded
PETA.
Warrior. Yeah,
Yeah.
PETA, Wounded Warrior, things like that. And that's great. And those places are great as well. They do great work. And I don't do anything to, dispel any of the work that they do. But we are just as bona fide
Yeah.
as they are, you
Yeah,
know?
it's no easy task getting a 501(c)(3,
No,
legitimate, and then all you wanna do is make sure that you live up to those standards
right,
set before, and that, so that, that you keep it and you keep in
right.
good standing and stuff because,
Yep.
it's a big thing to have, and then once you have it, and a lot of people, like, it might be different from state to state, but I know here when I was working with the city on their planning committees, I actually sat in, I guess you could call it judgment of the grants that were coming through.
Mhm.
And, to get some of those grants, you had to be a 501(c)(3, but you had to be a 501(c)(3 in good standing for 3 years before they would
Sure.
even give you a grant. So,
Right.
there's a lot to it that I don't think people, understand 100%,
Right.
but yeah,
And you're absolutely right. And the average person doesn't understand that. Not, you kind of really don't expect them to, I guess, really. I
yeah,
think that, what it is a lot of times at events, they'll see uh, people that are dressed up as Batman, Superman, whatever, and they're walking around asking for donate. They're trying to
yeah.
get donations as well, which is actually illegal. You can't do
Oh,
that.
yeah. Well, I had no idea. It's weird. Different states have different rules. Like,
Yeah,
for instance, we were gonna do some kind of like raffle,
yeah,
when I was doing that Comic-Con thing here,
Yeah.
And we found out that that's actually considered gambling, and
Yeah.
it was illegal for us to do a raffle. So we had to
Yeah.
completely shut down that idea. So I
Right.
mean, yeah, you have to be completely up on what, the legal stuff, you
Well,
know.
the thing is the reason that comic book characters and established characters can't do that is because of copyright infringement, right? So
Oh, okay.
yeah, so if Warner Brothers Studio came out and said you can use our characters to ask for donations, then it would be okay. But see, the thing is with Captain Wallace Artsy Adventures, I own everything.
Yeah.
So everything I do is all original characters. Everything is original, even down to the music that we use for Captain Wallace is music that I wrote. Actually, I wrote the song, and then what I do is I send it up. I have a band in uh, Wiltshire, England, I believe it is. But anyway, they're in the UK. They're in England, and they are a pirate band, and they actually take the words that I write and set it to music and everything, and made our, you know, Captain Wallace song, and we have some other songs for Andrina and Spooky Joe and things like that. So,
Yeah.
so it's pretty cool. And then now, thanks to you coming on board and helping out, we're going to start something I've really always wanted to have in the Captain Wallace universe is puppets
Yeah.
to work with. And I'm extremely excited about that because, I mean, it's just, as we've talked before, it's just an entirely different level to add on to Captain Wallace and everything, because even now when we make the show and we film in the green room and in green screen and things like that, and after I put because I do all the animations and everything, I put all that in, and I've always thought, man, I would love to be able to have some puppets in here interacting with the captain and the crew, and then some days if we can make some stories where it's just the puppets themselves, that would be great. And I'm just
Yeah.
ecstatic and excited to be doing this.
Yeah, it's gonna be a blast. I mean, I've had the opportunity to build for shows in the past, and they were all corporate and stuff, and it's always a hassle. The thing that was so appealing about this is, no, well, number one, you and I are friends, but you know, it's indie. I mean,
Yeah,
there's number one, there's no limit to the imagination.
right,
There's no corporate intervention,
right.
and you're essentially, growing this thing, with it's like it's homegrown
Yeah,
100%. So yeah, this is just adding a layer onto something that exists and that people are already excited about. This is just another, I guess another venture into the artsy adventures, I guess, so it's just going to give him another world to involve himself with, with the three
exactly.
characters. So
But the way that I think about things, and I alluded to it earlier when I said that I think years ahead, and I think about what I'm leaving behind. Because I think we all have to think about what we're leaving behind someday for our kids and for our
yeah,
grandkids and for future generations. And as a matter of fact, every time I write a book, that's what I put in there. I put in the dedication that it's dedicated to future generations that are going to come later. And I'm trying to leave positive messages. I'm trying to leave messages in bottles for the future generations. That's what I'm trying to do,
yeah,
really. And my kids, my personal kids have been instructed on what to do and things with Captain Wallace, and even with my artwork. I have books and books of sketches and things in my studio here, and they've been instructed on what to try to do with those things after I'm gone. You know what I mean? And I would hope that they don't just have a bonfire, and just get rid of everything. Be like, oh, Dad's gone, and just get rid of it. Because here's a funny thing. I asked Holly Frazetta one time, Frank Frazetta? Remember
Uh-huh.
Frank Frazetta? Well, his daughter, I was talking to her not a couple years ago, probably. And I asked her, I said, I said, when your dad was painting all that artwork and he was painting Conan paintings and Tarzan and he was doing all these wonderful works. I said, did you as a child growing up in his studio, did you know that he was as loved by as many people as he absolutely was? And she's like, no, I should say to us, he was just dad. He was just a
Yeah.
weird, just a guy that was painting all the time. He was just dad, And I think that's the way it is with my kids, with me too. And don't get me wrong, I'm not putting myself on the same uh,
Oh, no,
level
I
as Frank
understand.
Frazetta. I'm not doing that at all. But I'm just saying that as an artist, and we don't know how history is going to look at us after we're gone. You know what I mean? Hopefully, it looks at us as people that have tried to exit this plane of existence and leave it in a better shape than we found it when we first
Yeah.
came here. And that's really my goal.
Yeah.
To do that. You know.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. It's gonna be a task, and we've talked about this, in the past of, you know, the level, of work and, what's the word? I guess just in overall investment of bringing something like puppets and stuff to a program
Hmm.
because, you know, and here's to looking for the day where people don't have to do the volunteer things, but
Yeah.
bringing in puppeteers. I
Yeah.
mean, that's I mean, and people who know what they're doing, because a lot of times you'll see puppeteers, you can tell who knows what they're doing and who doesn't, because just something as simple as opening the mouth, you
Sure.
know, it's the lower jaw that moves, not the you don't slap it. I mean, unless that's
Right.
the character, right? Like Cookie Monster or something,
Right.
but
Right.
very few characters are like that,
Right.
so there's a specific way of moving, the drama of moving it. I
Yeah.
mean, having the microphone in your ear, being able to speak clearly through there in the character's voice,
Yeah.
also looking at a monitor, and your world is backwards
Yeah.
because the monitor is always going to be opposite of what's going on. It's like, so you're trying to
Right.
shave in a mirror, you're kind of wash, it's operating in that world. So I mean, it's a
Yeah.
job creator. I mean,
Yeah.
and depending upon how many puppets are involved in a scene, I mean, you got that many puppeteers.
Yeah.
We have having people who know what they're doing, the
Yeah.
puppeting, the
Yeah.
creation of the puppets themselves. you
Yeah.
know it's a lot, and yeah, a lot of times the undertaking sounds great, and and then you see the transactions, you're like, oh my god, what do I.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy.
It's a lot of work, and the thing is I think that's why the stipulation a lot of times with you said before when you were on the council and you had to look at 501c3s that had been in existence for at least 3 years before you would even really deal with them at all. And
Yeah,
I think that's probably why,
yeah,
that's a good reason why, because a lot of people want to start something out, but then they don't follow through, or it gets left by the wayside,
yeah,
or life happens, and it gets left by the wayside, sometimes through no fault of their own. But here's the thing, what people don't realize is when you have a 501c3, now here's the thing, that the hierarchy of it is, the building of it is, I'm not just by myself doing this. I'm not a
yeah.
guy by myself. I was a guy all by myself back in the year 2000, 2001, when I first started putting Captain Wallace together. Once I decided to become a 501c3 nonprofit charity organization, I had to get a group of people together, a board, so
Mhm.
that we would have a sitting board, so that it wasn't just me, just one guy by myself making all the decisions. Now, here's the thing: as the founder of the organization, and everything, I have last word, but
Mhm.
we still have a group, that makes decisions on, money on major purchases and things like that, because that's your fail safe. That's one of your fail safes that
Mhm.
keeps everybody honest.
Yeah.
And that's a huge thing with charities, is everything has to be transparent. The thing is I even online with GuideStar, I have a platinum rating with GuideStar. You know what I mean? And what GuideStar does, they oversee 501c3s, I think on a national level. And if they see anything hinky at all, they'll come in and they'll investigate and make sure everything's good. So people don't realize the tons of paperwork and the tons of hoops that I have to jump through all the time, just in order to keep the 501c3 going. Now, I know of a different charity that was going to comic conventions, and I won't say their name. I won't say who they are. I've never wanted to try to call anybody out and embarrass them or anything like that. So, but I will say that they would use, like I said, like Batman, and they would use, Spider-Man and comic book characters to do fundraising with. And it just took the wrong person to report them,
Yeah.
and they lost their charity status, because you cannot do that. Now, see, the thing is anybody out there can say they're a nonprofit. Anybody can say they're a nonprofit organization. They don't really have to prove it to anybody. All they have to do is say, hey, we're a nonprofit. We don't use this money to buy anything for ourselves. And then they can say, well, we donate the money that we gather. We donate it to March of Dimes, or we donate it to that hospital over there, or we donate it to this person or that person. And that's all fine and good. And again, I'm not taking any shade from any of those people that do that. If they're doing that and they're doing it with a good, clean heart, and they're actually doing what they're saying they're going to do with the money, then God bless them. They can continue to do that. But with a nonprofit charity, one way to always know that you're dealing with a charity itself that's bona fide, with the IRS, that we're regulated through the IRS, is that any charity would tell you that I can write you a receipt right now for your charity for anything that you donate that is tax deductible. You can use it to deduct taxes on your income taxes. So doesn't matter the amount. If you
Yeah.
give me $1, I can give you a receipt for that. If you give me $1,000, I can give you a receipt for that. If you give me $1 million, thank God, I would do just about anything you'd want me to do for $1 million. Within some reason, but I would give you a receipt for that. And that's how you know that you're actually working with an actual bona fide regulated 501c3 charity organization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we were talking about things like grants. I mean, you know, it's not free money. I mean, to a certain extent it is, but you have to report at the end of the grant, so you receive the grant at a specific time, and then you have so much time before you have to submit a report talking about the success and the failure of what you had
Yeah.
done, especially in the creative process.
Right.
And you have to have money to match,
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of
Yeah.
cases, if you're asking for like $5,000 from a grant, you have to have $5,000 of your own money. When I say your own money, I mean the organization's money to
Yeah.
put up with that. You
Yeah.
know, so it's a challenge. I mean, a lot of people think, oh, well, we'll just get a grant for that. Well, number one, I mean, the grants are hard. I mean,
Right.
you and I have talked. I mean, one of the things that we're going to have to look at in the future is hiring someone
Yeah.
who does grant proposals,
Yeah.
professionally,
Yeah.
because and you're going to want somebody who's got a track record of,
Yeah.
okay, well, how many grants have you written in the last few years and how many of those funded,
Right.
because that's important. And those people, they don't do that stuff for free. So,
Right.
and they shouldn't, I mean, they're good at
Right.
what they do. They should
Right.
get their, but that's something that we're going to have to look at, pretty hard, especially as this thing grows, because,
Yeah.
charity, I don't want to say charity, fundraising to a certain extent, you get so much and you need the support
Hmm.
that's been provided by the state government, the, local municipalities, federal government. You want those things, to be able to help and supplement and things like that.
Right.
Um, but I've got friends here that have had theater companies, um every year they have to come in, and for any show that they're doing they have to have, number one, the grant submitted
Hmm.
with the project and x amount of dollars matching the money,
Right.
and they've been doing that for 10 years. So
Yeah.
it's like, even once you're established and you've been doing this for years, I mean, you're still looking for grants to
Oh,
help
absolutely.
you supplement, because we're talking about art and we're talking about
Oh,
the
yeah.
arts, and
Yeah.
no one really gives a shit about the arts when it comes to, you know, the creative process and the funding involved.
You know what? That's exactly right, and that's a valid point. If you want to hold that thought for a minute, let me. I just want to end this show real quick, okay?
Okay.
Because I need to download this before it,
Oh,
because
sure.
it's on the same timer that you know
Yeah.
about and at the other place. So I'm just gonna end this recording real quick. Yep, we're doing a timeout. And just we'll take this conversation back up on the next show. So everybody tune into that. Thank you for listening to Behind the Mast with Dan Monroe. If you would like to learn more about the Captain Wallace Artsy Adventures nonprofit charity organization, please find us on Facebook, Instagram, and our website, CaptainWallace.org. And remember, as the old Captain Wallace always says, head into an artsy adventure.